Hello, my name is Matt. Welcome to Unbearable 73. In this video, we'll discuss the first news about the next Monsterverse film, also being called the Godzilla vs. Kong sequel, and some news reports. The article I'm referencing comes from Bleedingcool. You see it on your screen. The article is written by Caitlin Booth, has three basic parts to it, sort of opening, where they're talking about Legendary and Warner Brothers and sequels and things like that. And then a press release from Queensland in Australia, and then ends with the article authors' thoughts and conclusions on sequels and Godzilla Monsterverse related matters. Okay? I mentioned all of it in my thoughts here. So the Monsterverse series has its flaws, which I think limited profits, and I'll talk more about that below. But it's been overall successful enough that it's had 4 films and some supporting material so far. In the article we see on the screen, this article firstly and rightly addresses the concept of profitability in the recent pandemic era and the split releases between the cinema and the streaming services that we've all seen over the past 2 years, to both, to the theaters and whatnot. And some studios have taken the approach where they will put it out in both places. Some will put it only out in the theater. Some will put it out in the theater first and then maybe 30 days later release it on the streaming service. And we've seen all 3 approaches, right? So Caitlin Booth brings up a valid fan concern that the studios might not consider, when they release it simultaneously or right away on the streaming service, they might not consider the economic impact, the profit of the streaming service, in whether they decide to do a sequel or sequels to the film. That's very important. But she notes that Legendary, in this particular case, Legendary Pictures, appears to is actually factoring that in. They made their plans around not only with the limited box office because of the pandemic situation, that they planned on the streaming services as part of their income. So, for example, they released Mortal Kombat last year, which didn't make as much box offices, but it did very well on streaming, so they're making sequels. Likewise, the Suicide Film Squad movie has a TV show sequels, and we have Godzilla vs. Kong, the sequel, and have a forthcoming Dune franchise, for example. The next major data in the article is the release from the Queensland government, which is where they filmed Kong Skull Island and Godzilla vs. Kong. And the Queensland government apparently signed an agreement with Legendary so that they'll film the next Monsterverse movie there. And their news release from Queensland mentions that the budget is being doubled. So this suggests to me that more money is being paid into this for a bigger budgeted film. But so I guess they see the pandemic starting to end in a lot of ways, or the restrictions that the pandemic caused. Plus, since they've established a place in Queensland, this might be the home of the Monsterverse filming if they have a good relationship with them. And the final thing this article mentions is the box office successes of the Monsterverse. Dollars for donuts, so to speak. Godzilla 2014 was the most profitable. No one knew what to expect, and honestly, the movie had low expectations and made good money on low expectations at a controlled budget. And we all saw that film with the limitations. That they had a couple of good fights in there, but they obscured the special effects with rain all the time, so they're able to get it with spending less and so forth. And then she highlights the lower than expected revenues from Godzilla the King of the Monsters in 2019 and Godzilla vs. Kong in 2021. Now, I have a different reason for why I think revenues for the Godzilla franchise have been lower than expected. Okay, so I addressed it a little later, but let me give my thoughts on my history and thoughts on Godzilla before, so you know where I'm coming from. In short, I've been a Godzilla fan since I was a child. I tend to rewatch between 10 and 20 Godzilla films per year, which is more than any other franchise of movies that I will rewatch. So to understand also where the Monsterverse stands as far as what's coming next, we've never seen the original agreement between Toho and Legendary, but we do know Toho initially only licensed Godzilla, Rodan, Mothra, King Ghidorah, and Mechagodzilla. And they only licensed 4 movies worth of use of them. So from here out, they had to negotiate a new package, so to speak. And Toho, the word was that Toho was going to see how the films did, uh, and how the property was treated, because they didn't want to deal with Godzilla 1998 all over again, and before they would let more happen. And Toho was supposedly was very happy about the legendary Godzilla and Monsterverse and Godzilla and Kong films. So, and the second part of this is Toho themselves have announced that they're going to do their own series of Godzilla films. They're currently in the Reiwa period, which is the fourth period of Godzilla films that was from with Shin Godzilla and several anime Godzilla movies and a TV show. They're the so this new period of Godzilla from Toho will be sometime in the mid 2020, 2025 or so, 2026, and it'll be totally separate from the Reiwa movies. Legendary is also raising their studio profile. We also saw Dune, how well that went over. They have, if you look up the films that Legendary has done over the past 10 or 15 years, they've become one of the big studios now for epic films like this. And so it would make sense Toho is going to renew the agreement because they could time their releases of Godzilla, like let's say whatever the next MonsterVerse film is comes out in 2024, then Toho could put a film out in 2025 to, because the MonsterVerse films seem to be about 3 years apart, and so Toho can fill the gap in with a film in between to keep the interest going, but not oversaturate by putting out one every year. And here's the part that I think the failings of the legendary Godzilla movies, so to speak. I think they've left $200 billion or more per film on the table because of a constant mistake that they kind of partially recognize they're doing, and you see them from film to film. They keep trying to fix it, but I don't know if they're under pressure from upper management or they have people who think they know better and they just need to tweak it. But here's the number one important thing to know about Kaiju films. Okay, number one, the stars of the movie are the Kaiju. There has very rarely been successful returning human characters in Kaiju films, yet multiple Kaiju monsters have been in multiple films that make money over multiple decades. Okay, just to name the ones you've heard of: Godzilla, King Kong, Gamera, Mothra. Rodan has had 2 films. Daimajin had 3 films. That's a Japanese giant stone monster. There are other, besides that, lesser known series of monster films you have heard of, but the point is the monsters keep coming back, but the people don't. Right? Because fundamentally, the band of Kaiju films, who are the primary advocates to get people to watch this, don't care too much about the humans. So, to keep it simple, in the best Kaiju films, the main storyline is for the Kaiju, and there's usually one main human storyline along with it. The main human storylines fill the gaps between when the Kaiju are off screen. So when the monsters are fighting, at best the humans should be either running away or helping the monsters, or so to speak, helping Godzilla fight the bad guy or whatever, or fighting the bad guy monster. There shouldn't be, as we saw in Godzilla King of the Monsters, a family drama being resolved while the monsters were fighting. Yeah. The main human story in the Kaiju movie should support the monster storyline. Like any supporting storyline for the Kaiju or the humans shouldn't have any additional scenes besides what the scenes you need for the main monster storyline or the main human storyline. Otherwise, it takes away. And here's a prime example. In the original Godzilla, the main Kaiju storyline was Godzilla's assault on humanity. The main human story was how did humanity deal with it. There were a couple of minor storylines, like several of the characters, I don't remember the names right now, but the 2 young Japanese couple who fall in love, Dr. Serizawa, in the American version of the film, the Raymond Burr's character. But there were no additional scenes with those characters in the storylines that were addition to either Godzilla attacking humanity or humanity dealing with it. Those supporting storylines were fulfilled in the context of those 2 storylines. right? So all four of the Legendary Monsterverse movies struggle with this concept, and I'll give you the examples. In Godzilla 2014, here's one example. We were originally set up with the main human storyline being told via Bryan Cranston's character. So we had the monsters somehow attacking humanity, or humanity being in danger as a side effect, because they want to treat the monsters as natural disaster type effects, right? And Bryan Cranston's character, Joe Brody, was set up as the beginning as the human who first had to deal with the loss of his nuclear power plant and his wife, and the destroyed relationship with his son, right? So that's his personal storyline, right? But the main storyline is dealing with the monsters. So when Joe returns, we have Joe and Ford's relationship as a supporting storyline. Sealand is going to be resolved while Joe and Ford are dealing with the monster attack. No additional work, right? Well, Joe Brody gets killed off, and now Ford's storyline, they keep you with it with Ford's wife and son, but no one cares because those two, Ford's father-son relationship, which they tried to go with some sort of evolved thing where like Ford was trying to have a better relationship with his son here with his dad and so forth, but he was making the same mistakes by being obsessed with his job type of thing. No one cared because Ford was totally secondary to the resolution of that film. They could have got any demolitions expert to do his role. Okay? Any of them. There was nothing special about his character that needed to be there. Therefore, anything related to him, like his wife and child storyline, no one cared about. You know? Now, had they kept Joe Brody to the end of the film, you might have cared about that. They might have had interaction with the family. Again, you can see what I'm saying. In Kong Skull Island, we have a similar issue. Samuel L. Jackson played Packard, trying to get revenge on Kong for the entire film. No one took that seriously, and it didn't do anything to deal with the situation the character in, which was trying to survive on the island. Whereas, then meanwhile, we had Samuel L. Jackson almost being told to play a character of his own his own character, so to speak, where he's trying to kill the motherfucking ape. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, no, they could have. So we'll go on to the next one. In Godzilla, King of the Monsters, the main human storyline should have been dealing with the terrorists trying to weaponize King Ghidorah. Instead, we had a melodrama about a dysfunctional family of scientists, and no one cared. No one wanted to see it. They could have cut 20 minutes out of that film, literally, and it would have been better pacing and more. They would have more showings. People would want to come back for an exciting film about monsters fighting and military helping Godzilla and all that, right? And then Godzilla vs. Kong, we had two independent human storylines, and both. The only purpose of the Kong human storyline was to get Kong to the point where he would eventually encounter Mechagodzilla and Godzilla. That was supported, right? Well, the human storyline with Godzilla and going to find Mechagodzilla, you didn't need that at all. You could have totally edited that out, not had the early Mechagodzilla reveal, right? And still had an awesome fight at the end when Mechagodzilla wakes up and busts out of the mountain. Now, I understand they tried to do it where they wanted to show how Mechagodzilla would go crazy, but they could have included that at the end, where Mechagodzilla, again, they could have cut time out of that, or add another monster fight entirely into that, have Kong fight a monster. We quickly fought two monsters in the Hollow Earth. Could have fought a big monster down there. There are lots of things they could have did better with that film. So, stop my little bit of a rant on, I think you get the point. Too much humans, as everyone will say. So, in short, what I want to see in the next Monsterverse movie, separate Kong and Godzilla back into their own sub-franchises, so you can maybe have like a Godzilla film and 2 years later a Kong film and so forth. Just so you could set up them one more epic team up, maybe 9 years from now to fight another super monster. I originally wanted to move on to the next point. I originally wanted them to make Mechagodzilla have an alien origin, like in the Japanese films. It's too late for that now. I don't think you can go extraterrestrial anymore unless you have another invasive super kaiju. But we've seen that already with King Ghidorah, and so what they can do though, since they set up these underground civilizations, is have an underground civilization with a monster that chooses to attack the Earth. That's a viable option for storyline. Basically, take the plot of Godzilla vs. Megalon and make an actual good movie as opposed to Godzilla vs. Megalon with it. The other option would be like a monster that actively preys on humans, some sort of well, we've seen that in Gamera before with Gauss. It's too soon to have King Ghidorah return, and even though it seems like any little chunk of him will grow into a King Ghidorah, and it's too soon to bring Mechagodzilla back. So we have to see what they can license from Toho, what they can create on their own. It's also, I think it's too soon to go with Destroyer right now, because we just had two monsters that almost killed Godzilla. We're going to have a third one almost kills Godzilla. Is that going to be the theme? A super monster almost kills Godzilla. Godzilla gets some weird power up to no. They got to be creative with this one. Yeah. So I think I'll end it here. I don't want to keep ranting about this. My thoughts are a little bit disjointed on this one because I'm kind of conflicted. Part of me, I don't know. I just feel with American films lately, I mean, Dune gave me hope, but it just seems I feel like I'm going to be let down way more than I used to be. But I'm a Godzilla fan, so I'll keep watching. So, what are your thoughts? What would you like to see in the next Monsterverse film? Have any questions for me down below? Share those. If you like it, hit the like button. If you dislike, don't. Subscribe if you'd like to hear more from me. Have a nice day. This is Matt from Unbearable 73, and I am out of here.